Recording in progress.
There we go. Thank you very much. Alan Klinkhoff, who I've known for 5 decades now, is the owner of the Alan Klinkhoff Galleries, and they have one storefront in Montreal managed by his son Craig and a second in Toronto managed by his son Jonathan. I met his father many years ago when it was still quite a while after the gallery had actually opened, because Walter had been in the business a long time. The gallery is one of Canada's foremost sellers of important Canadian art. Their website, according to Alan, is the finest site of any comparable art gallery business in Canada and welcomes visitors globally 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. The site is managed by a small, young, and dynamic team. On this platform, Alan Klinkhoff Gallery receives more visitors in a single day than both storefronts combined all year. So if there's news for us there, we know that we could make our website work. Alan began his career at the Walter Klinkhoff Gallery from 1975 to 2013 and took over as president in 1981. The Walter Klinkhoff Gallery officially closed in 2014, but was followed immediately by the opening of the Alan Klinkhoff Gallery. The objective of the gallery is to be Canada's go-to gallery for both buyers and sellers of important works of art of quality. Their mantra is, "We build collections." The theme for today's presentation is, quote, "On March 12th, 2020, at the Alan Klinkhoff Gallery, everything changed. Nothing changed." And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Alan.
Thank you for the generous introduction, Jim. You've all heard of Warren Buffett's often quoted statement, "It's only when the tide goes out that you discover who's been swimming naked." Well, when that proverbial tide went out on or around March 12th, and we had to lock the doors of both our galleries, everything changed, but absolutely nothing changed. We were fully suited up. Let me briefly tell you who we are and what we do. We're an expertise-based fine art gallery with 2 storefronts, one here in Montreal managed by my son Craig, with a great team, small team supported by the youth and intelligence and dynamism of Yasmin and Mary Lou, and a Toronto gallery managed by my son Jonathan and assisted by a new hire, Marisa, who's Marisa Mitchell. We have this really a market leading website where we show our entire inventory of fine art available and shown with the transparency of price available for the viewing of stakeholders 24/7, 365. On our website, we go to great length to try and develop what we call a trust path to show that we're more than just a place that sells pictures. That is to say, we want to create this notion that we genuinely have an understanding and appreciation of the works of art we sell in terms of quality. I'm not familiar with a comparable art gallery in Canada that in fact shows that transparency of price. You know, to many of you, this might sound pretty absurd, but in fact, if you look at galleries that sell what we would call classic works of art, that is works that's not coming directly from the artist, a business where there's this notion of visual identification and expertise involved, the norm is that when you see a painting, it says price on request. This is certainly for the youth of today, a silly notion that my children, thanks to their ingenuity and creativity and encouragement to look at the new world, they tell me that they wouldn't so much as subscribe to a hotel unless there's a price indicated. You can just imagine that for a potential art buyer to be looking at a gallery website like ours and maybe fall in love with a small 8 by 10 inch painting by an artist whose name there is Tom Thompson, and perhaps salivating over the potential acquisition of this particular work for a couple of days, may in fact have the courage to hit that button and inquire as to price, or maybe in fact pick up the telephone and engage in a conversation, only to find out that this individual with a very generous budget of $10,000 to spend on a work of art discovers that the picture is in fact $2 million. For me, $10,000 is a very substantial budget, and we certainly have any number of works of art available within that price point. And one wonders why this norm, that it remains a mystery. Why not inform the prospective buyer as to, in fact, all the works that are available for his or her budget? Our focus is on what we call classics. These are primarily deceased Canadian artists. The expertise that we offer is this visual identification, that we know that the work is authentic, not because it just reads here the name John Little, or maybe that there's a label on the back that from another gallery of another generation that says that it's a John Little. We in fact offer this painting with our expertise, that we are staking our reputation from our experience that this is in fact an authentic work by John Little. And we know that it's an authentic work by John Little because certainly in my career, I've known John Little all my life. And I identify that this in fact is by him. We would call this connoisseurship. And it's in fact this kind of connoisseurship that my sons are apprenticing with me to develop, as I did with my father in his generation and in my youth. Our price point in terms of acquisitions, I would say from about $1,000 to $2 million. We have had some works up in the $10 million range, wide variety. You've all heard the expression, where there's a will, there's a way. I suspect that the greatest challenge with older established traditional businesses, and maybe especially family businesses, small family businesses, is that although the younger generation in the business knows that there is a way to stay current, relevant, and achieve sustainability, the challenge is to instill in the older generation, the veterans, the will to in fact harness that way. And you might reasonably ask, why the reticence to change the way we do business. The first answer lies in the willingness of the veteran, that is me, to accept the wisdom of that the iconic Yogi Berra, the future ain't what it used to be. When one overcomes the reality that today and the future are going to be different ways of doing business than we did 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, then the challenge becomes, okay, am I willing to invest the significant sums of money that it might take to pursue that way? And this is at the expense of, let's say, short-term income, and maybe sacrifice a little bit of lifestyle. And then, of course, there's also the investment of an enormous amount of the very limited human resources that a little business like ours has internally, investing their time, taking away from our normal business to pursue that new or even current way. Well, thanks to the support and the youth of my son Jonathan and Craig, as well as they're supported by their team, they managed to bring me on board. And by the time March 12th came along, that just in the course of updating business practices, we were ready. When we were closed down first in Toronto, we actually were just previewing what was a real sort of market leading exhibition and sale at $15 million worth of Canadian paintings. And Toronto regulations obliged us to close the door. Well, thinking that this COVID-19 stuff, whatever it was on March 12th, we really didn't know. We thought, well, okay, it's going to be isolated here to Toronto. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these $50 million worth of art, and we're going to send them to Montreal. We're going to find a trucking firm, and we're going to advertise an exhibition and sale, a vernissage at our Montreal gallery. Well, we no sooner got the pictures to Montreal, and Craig and his partner, Lindsay, hung them on the wall. And lo and behold, as soon as they were on the wall, the very night of the opening, Montreal was closed down. And the only two people here in the gallery were Lindsay and Craig, and we hosted this wonderful exhibition in our gallery with a glass of wine. Well, I won't be cavalier about the anxiety, certainly more than a little bit of depression among ourselves, the stress that we all suffered through these really horrific couple of years. But the life of a work of art continued. It was something that wasn't affected by COVID-19. You ask yourself, well, why would people sell a work of art? Well, let's say, Jim, you're fortunate enough to, through the tragedy of demise of your parents, have inherited this $2 million Tom Thompson, and you may say, well, I wasn't really my choice to own to begin with, and I think I may have other uses for that $2 million, be it pay off my mortgage, get a new car, or who knows, maybe buy a work that you like. So death becomes a supply for a business like ours, and I won't tell you, I don't have to tell you that through COVID-19, death did not take a holiday. Divorce, people get divorced, and be it splitting goods, and one split up the pictures, maybe one or another doesn't like what he or she received, so they sell a work of art. Debt, obviously, if somebody has works of art and is out of a job, needs some money, and one wants to monetize that $2 million Tom Thompson that he or she has on the wall, makes perfect sense to sell. Downsizing, there was a little bit less of downsizing during COVID-19. That is to say, people weren't selling and buying homes as much as they did, but they did. There was some activity moving from a larger home where all your walls are filled with paintings, and to a smaller space with maybe more windows, so you sell some work. You ask yourself, on the other hand, during all that misery, why would people go and buy a work of art? Well, they have the money. The stock market was pretty vibrant. Get beyond the first few weeks of what all of us perceived as maybe Armageddon, the markets picked up and were pretty profitable. Hey, look, if buying a work of art makes you feel good, Great. And believe you me, there are many people who look at the acquisition of a work of art as a feel-good purchase. There wasn't a lot of things you could spend money on during COVID-19. There was, no opera, no ballet. You couldn't go to a Habs game. Couldn't go to the Turks and Caicos and catch some sun and sand, and you couldn't go skiing in St. Moritz. But if you were sitting in your home and you had the means and you had the interest, you could visit galleries online like ours, and you could pursue it and ultimately acquire something. Decoration, you decorate your home, again, makes you feel good. You might buy a work of art. You're stuck in your house for Lord knows who was to know it would be month in, month out. The idea of adding something new to the walls could be fun. And then there's the maxim, which for us is all important, is this notion of sort of collectors collect. Whether you collect artwork or you collect shaving mugs, it's something that one continues to do even in adversity. Thanks really to the foresight and energy of the youth in our gallery. We had everything up online. We have, as Jim in his introduction mentioned, something that I'm pretty proud of, really a market leading website for a business like ours. We really didn't miss a beat. That in complete transparency, again, the prices were posted. The telephone lines were hooked up, relayed immediately to cell phones. We were sitting at home. We could access our office inventory. We could access anything, be it literally from our cell phones. It was the way, and we were absolutely prepared to handle almost everything that our business requires to move properly. The challenges really of supply was how to manage people who wanted to sell. We weren't particularly able to go and visit people as we had, so we had to mobilize the transport systems. We could send boxes, wonderful boxes that are available to us, to the home of a prospective seller, tailor-made, arrive at their door. All they had to do was put the work of art inside. We had the ability literally to do any and all of the formalities for the transit of the work to get it to the gallery. And of course, one of us would come to the gallery and meet the artwork as it arrived. Again, the same for buyers. If somebody was interested in a work of art, although ideally he or she might have, and I underline might have, preferred to visit the work here at the gallery, the ultimate option was what we're doing right now, that some of the acquisitions, in fact, this $2 million picture was made on the strength of a Zoom conversation and meeting with a couple who 4 time zones away under normal circumstances would have wanted to come and visit the work of art, but because of the circumstance, just wasn't possible. And we weren't going to just FedEx out a $2 million picture out 4 time zones away in the hope that they might buy it. So telling them that essentially the picture was smaller than their computer screen, and because of the trust path that we had created and the discussions we could have, they were facilitated into making the purchase. Really, in our particular case, the insurmountable obstacle to business, in fact, were some of the federal government controls with export sales. Here in a country like Canada, where we rely so heavily on the export of goods, there's a certain irony about an incredible spaghetti of controls for exports of works of art worth over $50,000. And during COVID, we bumped into an expression that we had never heard before, trying to navigate this incredible web. The officialdom said that the system is, quote, horizontally controlled. That essentially means that among there were 3 departments that oversee the export of fine Canadian art, and actually fine art in general, and that they are horizontally controlled really means that nobody's in charge. And nobody's in charge, and some of the people are working from home, and the government says that some of the requests are of a confidentiality, that since the recipient expert examiner, if you will, has a server that is not 100% reliable, everything gets blocked, and the world in terms of export literally stopped. But that was the only major challenge that we could not in fact overcome. 30 months later, another yogi-ism. It ain't over till it's over, but 30 months later, with the ingenuity and energy and the path, the way that the youth in our business has convinced me to pursue, that they are steering the course in a large part on their own, with me as an advisor, and continuing to apprentice to adopt my eyes. And we are adequately convinced that the idea of really being the go-to business for the purchase and sale of high quality, important fine art in our marketplace is in fact achievable with diligence and on the honesty and integrity that our business pursues. That's what we do. And I'd be delighted and pleased if any of you have any questions, comments.
Thank you very much, Alan. I'm going to start off with a question just to cause trouble. Some of the words.
You're predictable, Jim. You're predictable.
Some of the words that you mentioned today and that you hear when you talk about art are good art, valuable art, important art, collectibles. What makes something collectible? I mean,
well, I'm going to go back to the good and the quality. I'm going to go back to the good and quality first, Jim, if I may. And that's this notion of I know a lot of people don't like this word, and particularly academics. They don't like the word connoisseurship. They don't like the fact that some people, just for instance, can actually tell you that this wine is really good. You know, you don't have to like it. You don't have to like it. But because they have been tasting wine, in between their eyes and their nose and their mouth, they're veterans, and they know what it is. I was speaking to a very well-known sports agent. I don't know, when we were chatting with actually Sidney Crosby and Brad Marsh, and then the gallery, the guy was doing, I don't know, a $30 million contract for Brad. And these guys know, they can spot a really great skater at age 12, and it can be anywhere in Russia. that they know what this looks like. It's not just a number. It's not a statistic. Speak to somebody who spends 10 hours a day listening to great music. That person, by virtue of his or her ears, knows what is a really good concert. You may not like that concert, and it may not even be his or her cup of tea in terms of the kind of music it is, but they know that it's good. And that's kind of our background. We see thousands and thousands and thousands of works of art every year. And when something is good, it sings in our eyes from our experience. And I personally have been on juries of art competitions with people who have a background in 19th century and 18th century European art, as well as the most contemporary, the meat dress, you know, that armature with stakes on it that got quite a bit of publicity some years ago. And looking at 500 works of art, we were able to boil it down to the quote best 10 in a few hours. It was quite an interesting experiment. In terms of collectible, Jim, that's a different kettle of fish. It's up to the consumer to ultimately decide what is popular. It's their money that will decide if you know, Florent Bouchard is more collectible than John Little, than Fred Hutchison and Cornelius Krieghoff. That's strictly a market situation. To avoid any cynicism, in most cases, I think the market does make sense. That the best artists may achieve the best prices. However, I need to underline that the tastes do change over time, and that some of the most popular pictures of the beginning of the 20th century, by actually great hands, were of a color sense, a lot of sort of browns and dark browns that today actually are less popular. They're every bit as good as they were 120 years ago, but the style of work doesn't work with so well with a lot of contemporary tastes. So the numbers can change in terms of the values, but the quality doesn't. The quality remains consistent, although market values can change.
Once again, I have to unmute yourself. Thank you very much. Here's a question from Glenn Shepard. As tastes change from generation to generation, is the interest in and the market for art growing in Canada?
Well, I think that certainly when I look at my children and their friends, and maybe it's human nature. I mentioned sort of collectors collect, and I know that watching my kids grow, literally from the get-go, they were collectors of something. And whether it's in my day it might have been marbles and hockey cards. Today people collect all kinds of things. I mentioned sort of shaving mugs. Some people collect comics for huge sums of money. So I think the notion of collecting is omnipresent. I don't know whether it's growing. It certainly hasn't diminished. And look, people do put things on their wall. Collecting art per se is a lot of people look at it as an asset class, but even if they don't look at it as an asset class, they're going to put something on their wall. And if they have a nice home, there's the notion of putting something, excuse the expression, but of quality on the wall can complement one's environment. There are some people who really have the bug and who are extremely aggressive collectors who they have paintings on the wall, they have paintings under the bed, and they have paintings in the cupboard, and they have paintings in storage, and they have some paintings at the framer that they've even forgotten about. But again, these are people who may have a few homes and a very significant stock portfolio. So as I say, that becomes kind of an asset class and one of many things that they may own, which also gives them enjoyment, by the way.
Okay, now tell me what you think about NFTs.
I don't know anything about it, and I don't want to know anything about it. No, I really, I've seen things come and go, and I think there are a multitude of, copyright issues there. But most importantly, I think just a product. Markets are always looking for new products to, excuse the expression, but flog. And I can't see that. Look, you can be a believer in those. You can be a believer in Bitcoins. I'm into classics. I'm not looking to pick, the pony the horse that's going to win the Preakness. I don't know. It's too long a shot when you go out and look at, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of things of artwork. And some of these artists may have a career of 3 weeks or 3 years, or it's just not enough. What we do is we are specifically interested in what we call the classics, things that have a genuine secondary market that is identifiable, that there is this notion of enduring value and quality. And NFTs, I don't know, and if in 50 years or 100 years people see that there's some validity to it, so be it. But it's nothing that interests me. I think that I'm very comfortable within the niche that we are in, and this notion of an identifiable quality and the expertise that we can bring into this market, that I'm extremely happy with that small field in which we are highly specialized. A lot of that stuff is, Jim, is strictly retailing. I mean, the money in my business is actually in what I would call retail art. You open up a storefront and you get works of art from an artist, and with the best of intention of encouraging artists, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing. But it's a retail business. And that kind of retail art has the long-term value of much of the retail things that you buy. You buy a nice chair for $3,000 and own it for 30 years. And I mean, you know what it's worth after that. And the same is true of most sort of retail art. This idea of our focus in the classics is where we want to be.
Other question, Jim?
Go right ahead, John.
It's John Donovan. Mr. Klinkhoff, first of all, I'm glad you enjoy Yogi Berra. And somewhat along that line, in my practice, I've come across the phrase, where there's a will, there's a relative.
Where there's a will, there's a what?
A relative.
Oh, yeah. Good.
Recently, in handling estates, I've come across some artists where I've had paintings to either dispose of or pass on. And the three artists I'm thinking of, one of them was Cornelius Bouter. Mm-hmm. One that's often come up is Elizabeth O'Rourke, who used to have a exhibition every year at Place Ville Marie. And the third one is a fellow who does seascapes named Federico. And I'm wondering,
Federico.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if you have any opinion on any of those three artists, or have you handled any of those?
Bouter, interestingly enough, that was I don't even think Bouter existed. That was a retail item that was brought in from Holland, strictly for a North American marketplace. If you mention Cornelius Bouter to the Dutch merchants, they don't know who that is. Another. I think he worked under another name by the name of Jan Vancouver. They don't know that name either. It was an export good that North American household responded to, because if one reads about sort of A.Y. Jackson in the beginning of the 20th century, he said, responding to the Canadian affluent household, their penchant to buy European art, particularly Dutch here in Montreal. In fact, he said, if cows are okay, why not the bull moose? And the idea of something being imported was considered, that was really good. And hence all this Boucher and De Hoog and Jan Vancouver and the Federicos. You know, they're always the same thing. It's a sea spray waves. It's nicely painted. Yeah, Cadmica or Federico. What do they call it? Breakers at Capri. You know, I think that's what they're all called. Look, they're nice. They're decorative. In the day they cost. I think the what was it called, Royal Gallery? I think here on Sherbrooke Street they sold them for, you know, $500, and people got 50 years of aesthetic enjoyment out of them, and they're entirely pleasant. The Elizabeth Rourke, I don't know the name, but there are, you know, hundreds and hundreds of decent artists who have sort of fallen through the cracks in terms of our marketplace, and you know, many of them kind of deservedly so, because you have to leave space for, you know, sort of new talents, you know, coming up, and you know, when the marketing stops, i.e. the demise of an artist, unless there's a demand by collectors going forward, the merchants aren't going to sort of go out and, you know, pay premiums to buy back these, you know, Elizabeth Rourkes and whatever. Yeah, that's a name that I'm not familiar with, but it doesn't mean that it's not a good picture.
Thank you. She used to do old Montreal scenes, and for a while, when she was very active, she would have an annual exhibit at Place Ville-Marie, and she would be sold out by noon of the first day.
You know what, the problem with that scenario, I mean, it's great. But the artist has a show and her friends come and they all buy, and that's wonderful. When an artist is selling his or her work, the merchants don't have a lot of interest in supporting that market, because all one is doing, in fact, is encouraging people to go to Elizabeth Rourke's home and buy her pictures.
Yeah.
The problem for the consumer of that work is because the artist is his or her, not only the manufacturer, but also the vendor. When it comes to selling the work, there's no platform to do it other than to go back to the artist, who will say, well, look, I don't want to paint these things. I've got lots to sell. I don't want yours. Which, you know, so, and also this, you know, excuse me of my cynicism, but I come by it honestly. A lot of artists who sell their own work, they're selling their own work because some of the obvious, or many, or maybe all of the obvious vendors who they would like to engage to sell it so they can just paint all the time, are not interested. And why aren't they interested? Because it may not be quite as good as the artist that they would like to have in their stable, as we call it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions for Alan? Okay, Alan, I'll tell you, if I get anything, I shouldn't say it that way. One of the interesting things that I've taken from your presentation is that, to me, you've kind of humanized art, given us certainly a better understanding of the machinations, or the forces that go into making something valuable and good. And your explanation of connoisseurship, I think, really hits something on the head there, comparing it to sports agents and to wine snob, not wine snobs, that's me, and and wine connoisseurs. And it's makes us realize that the 50 years that you've put into this business, and the 20-30 years that your sons have already put into it, is a long-term learning process that obviously never stops, and that an outsider can't necessarily understand. It's hard for us to see the blood, sweat, and tears that have gone into learning what you do know. Very much we sometimes we appreciate a hockey star because he's really worked hard over the years, and then you can kind of see the development of a player or whatever. But somebody in your position, I think you've really pointed out that you're a growing a growing entity like anybody else, and a superstar in your own business.
Jim, you're very kind, and I before you people say goodbye, I want to add one more thing, and we brought up this idea of wine a few times. I did originally, and I worked with some extremely important people who taste wine, and what I have done when if I have an event, my son's wedding, for instance, I went to the head of the Toronto club in Toronto, who's extremely, they have a great wine selection. And I said to the general manager, could you recommend some wines that are available here in Ontario, where my son was getting married, that are within my price point? And he knows good wine. He's actually gone to some of the vineyards and wineries, they call it, in southwestern Ontario, and had specific blends made. And so what I will do is I will go and buy a bottle of each of these, and then select the one that I like for the wedding. So I know that all the wines are good wines, and then we just select the ones that are that we like. In terms of our business, what we do, since we know that, lawyers, doctors, whatever your profession is, you don't have the opportunity to look at all those artists out there and all the things in the secondary market. So what we offer here is a vetted selection, that we have put together a selection of work that is good, that it's good in terms of the integrity of the artist, the quality of the individual picture, and it's available for what we think is a fair price. So when you come to the gallery, you are seeing a selection of what we believe is good art, and then you select what you like that you can afford, and that becomes one of the key issues in terms of the service that we are offering, that expertise beyond just paintings. Thank you for your attention. Thanks, Jim, for the opportunity to meet with your people.
Good to see you as always, Alan, and you can close the recording, please.